Welcome to Knife Thoughts. This video is going to be a review of this knife, and this is the Rhino Fermi. So this is a new knife from Rhino, and it was sent to me by Rhino. I had become aware of Rhino because they're a relatively new company in the knife market, and their kind of claim to fame is that they have tritium inserts on the knives, and they also sell tritium accessories. So I'm going to talk first about kind of what tritium is and why it's special, then talk about the design of this knife, and then just the quality, the construction. So tritium is a light giving, so it's not glow in the dark, it actually gives off light, radioactive isotope. So it doesn't need a battery, you don't have to shine a flashlight on it, it just glows, and it's going to glow for a long time. It's not like normal glow in the dark where you shine a flashlight for a while and then it glows for 30 minutes or a couple hours or something. This will glow for years. So depends, I think, on each individual piece, but 5-10 years I don't think would be unreasonable on these. So it's really cool that it glows without a power source. There's not a lot of things that do that, right? Like the sun and probably some other radioactive things that I don't know about, but that's pretty much it. I mean, flashlights, you need a battery, lights, you need electricity. It's really cool that it doesn't need any sort of power source. And I think that it kind of gets into that stage of science where it's almost like magic. It's almost beyond what our normal kind of experience of the world, right? Normally the sun gives off light, and then now we have electricity, which is kind of mundane now, but then this little piece of something giving off light, it really does kind of move into sci-fi for me. So I think that that's really cool. And this knife has two of what they call their XL inserts, and then it also has an insert on the thumb stud. Now that green ring is not tritium, that's an accent, and you can get it in a couple different colors, but I like that they sent the green because it goes with the tritium. Now, tritium can be kind of hard to get. I actually wish I had tritium on some of my flashlights and things like that, but it is regulated, and so it can be kind of hard to get into the US. Speaking of that, you can see this string of numbers here, excluding the D2, and that's some sort of kind of like identifier or something along those lines that is part of how they are able to sell these knives with the tritium on it in the US legally. So it's pretty kind of unique within the market, and it adds value. So if tritium is something you value, which I think if you're considering buying this knife you must, you have to look at how much tritium costs on its own. So for example, they also gave me a couple of their tritium vials, kind of key fobs. Here's one of them that I put on my zero feud EDC pouch. Something like that, from Rhino or other places is, in the $20 range, around that. Can be even more for sure. And then their accessories, like a thumb stud for some other knife that you can just add to your knife, can be in the $30 to $50 range. So the fact that this comes with a thumb stud plus two of these XL inserts, which are significantly bigger than most of the kind of traditional vial style tritium pieces, so you get a lot more area and therefore a lot more light, you're getting a lot of tritium built into this knife. So I think if you value tritium, there's a lot of extra value in the knife inherently. Now, speaking of how bright it is, it's not super bright. It's not like having a flashlight. What it is kind of like, it just allows you to see the knife or the piece of tritium in the dark. So for example, I have that fob on my EDC pouch. I have a couple fobs on my fanny pack that I carry most of the time. And if you wake up before the rest of the family or something and don't want to turn the lights on, it's pretty easy to see those things, those pieces of gear or whatever, because they have the tritium. But it's not going to be able to be used like a flashlight. So it's bright enough to see, but not bright enough to light other things up. So it's pretty cool, and this larger piece here on these XL inserts do give off a lot more light than your typical tube style tritium, like I say. So I do like that a lot, and it's not a super expensive knife. This is a $100 knife, and you know, it's made well. It's made by Bestech. I'll talk about the construction in a little bit here. But let's move into the design. So this is what I would call a very EDC friendly design. It's a relatively small knife, so a size that I think a lot of people consider to be EDC friendly. It's a little smaller than I typically carry for my modern knife, because I often carry a traditional knife also. But there it is in comparison to a Civivi Elementum. Here is a Wee Banter. Here is a Spyderco Native 5. So you can see it's right in line with those other kind of classic EDC sized type knives. Again, it's a little smaller than I typically carry, but it's also a good size if you do have to think about like legality and things like that. Definitely always check your local laws and everything, but it's not a super long blade, so a lot of places it will be legal, at least here in the US. It also has a pretty simple design, which I always like. You know, if you watch my channel, I say that a simple handle makes for an ergonomic handle, and that's true here. The handle is nice and simple. I can get a good almost forefinger, not quite, but almost forefinger. You can see my pinky comes off of the edge a little bit, and there are some kind of hard corners there, but I didn't find it really to be any problem in use, particularly because a lot of the time you're using a pinch style grip when you're actually using a knife. So I found the handle to be ergonomic enough, and certainly, you know, for your normal daily tasks, honestly, most of the time, most of my use for a knife these days is cutting food into baby bite size. It's not going to create hot spots in that type of use. And then the blade is also a really classic style drop point. So you can see it's got a nice flat grind, not a full flat grind, but a pretty high flat grind. And it seems to be ground pretty well. You can see kind of the thickness behind the edge there. It cut well in my use. I did take this on a little trip, and it was a beach trip, so a little bit of water on it, and that coating on the D2 I found to be pretty useful. So speaking of which, it is D2. D2 sometimes is kind of poo-pooed by people these days. I think it's a really reliable and familiar steel for me. It's easy to sharpen, and with a coating, you really don't have to worry too much about rust. It's not going to rust through the coating. It's almost stainless. It almost has enough chromium to be considered stainless anyway, and with this coating, it's going to be just fine. For my use, D2 works perfectly well. I also like that it has the coating on the blade to match the black handle and the black hardware, because it really gives it this cool blacked out look, so that when it is in the dark, the only thing you see is the tritium, and really that's it. The only part that isn't blacked out is the Rhino logo, the steel and kind of identifier here, and then of course the edge. So it really has this cool blacked out look that makes that tritium stand out on the knife. So I really like that. I think it's a great kind of classic EDC design, nice and simple, and particularly if you do want a smaller knife in that 3-inch blade length range. Now, as for the construction, this is made by Bestech, like I said, I believe I said. So Bestech is the manufacturer of these knives, and Bestech does a great job. They have their own brands, but they also do OEM work for lots of other brands, and I think they just really make a nice knife. So this knife came super smooth, drop close smooth. I did do an unboxing, you can see that, and it hasn't needed adjusted at all. It is easy to open with the thumb stud and drops closed nicely. The thumb stud sits a little close to the handle, but you can kind of get a middle finger flick. I pretty much always just did a normal thumb flick though. So easy to open, very nice action. It came centered nicely, and it has no play, nice lockup, so really well made, and nice kind of simple beveled handles. I think all of it comes together to have kind of a classic but at the same time futuristic look. And the name Fermi comes from, you know, of course, a scientist who is a pioneer of the atomic age. So I really like kind of the whole package that they put together here. It's a cool little knife. It has really a unique feature. There's no other knives that I'm aware of that on the market that come with tritium. Of course, there's lots of glow-in-the-dark knives, but there's a big difference. If you've ever seen tritium, it has a very different feel and a different cool factor than glow-in-the-dark. So I think that the Glow Rhino Fermi is a cool little knife. If you are interested in tritium, if it's something that you value, I think that really this is your one of your only options, but a good option too. So I really appreciate the people of Glow Rhino sending this knife along for review. I have enjoyed getting to check it out. If you do pick one up, let them know that you saw about it on Knife Thoughts. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell, and select all so you know when I post new videos. And last but not least, as always, don't forget to go out and do good.